This is NBC 10 News Sunrise.
For Monday morning, November 17th, a band with a real connection to Southern New England had to cancel one of their concerts after some trouble on the road over the weekend. We have that story in detail in just a moment.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is investigating yet another outbreak of a dangerous virus on board a cruise ship.
We'll have that story in detail, the rest of the news too. And in sports, it was another big blowout by the Patriots last night as they continue to look better and better each week. We have a full report on that game that you probably thought it was worth staying up late for, just to savor the conclusion.
Why not?
Barbara Frink.
Thank you, Molly. Time now, 4:30 to our top story this morning. Boston-based band the Dropkick Murphys had to cancel their show in Austin, Texas last night after their tour bus was involved in a fatal accident.
The bus driver struck and killed a pedestrian. The band was en route to Dallas when a pedestrian ran onto the highway and was struck by the tour bus. The Boston Globe reports the police say the victim was a white man and they're looking into whether it was a suicide. It happened at 3 o'clock yesterday morning. More information on the accident could be made available later today. The band had played a show in San Antonio Saturday night. They were headed to play in Tulsa, Oklahoma after a stop in Dallas. And the band members are expected to continue the next leg of their tour in Mexico and South America. Frontman Ken Casey, by the way, is also the owner of the Whiskey Republic on South Water Street in Providence.
The man found guilty of killing a puppy and domestic violence is expected to be sentenced later today. Prosecutors say 44-year-old Luis LeBoy killed his ex-girlfriend's Chihuahua and then threw the dead dog at her. He was found guilty back in September. He was granted bail but never showed up for his motion for a new trial. So a judge denied the motion and revoked his bail. He's been staying at the ACI since then. LeBoy is expected to appear before a judge at Superior Court in Providence.
A woman who was sold for sex in Providence while she was a teenager is speaking now about her experience, and she has revealed a loophole in a Rhode Island law. NBC 10's Tony Gugliotta has that story.
This Providence house on Pinehurst Street, truly a house of horrors for Linda Otto. She was just 16, a kid, when she says she was brought here from her home in Yonkers, New York, and sold for sex. Why are you telling your story? Why are you telling it now?
Because it needs to be put out there. It needs to be over and done with.
I spoke with the 24-year-old Linda at length Sunday on a Google video call. She tells me that she still suffers, some 5 years later, experiencing nightmares and terrifying flashbacks.
I can be doing really, really well, and then this can come up again, and then everything I just gained is gone.
Linda was just a child when she was brought to Rhode Island from Yonkers in 2006 by Andrew Fakori and Joseph DeFace. She admits she was a bit of a wild child when she was that age and knew the older men from her hometown. But she never expected to be held captive for 3 years, drugged, and made to have sex with countless numbers of strange men who would come by any time of day or night.
I mean, it's not something that is easy to understand, and I don't know if I'm trying to answer the questions that everybody will have.
One question she doesn't have an answer to, though, is how DeFace is allowed to remain in her neighborhood. He manages a restaurant right up the street. She says she's scared sometimes, but is more equipped to deal with it now as an adult. She also thanks Providence police detectives who worked the case, especially Sergeant Patrick McNulty, for keeping in contact with her even to this day.
He's like a dad to me because of the way he cares. You don't meet people like that every day anymore that actually care, whether you were right or whether you were wrong. I mean, if it wasn't for them, I could not be as strong as I am.
Tony Gugliotta, NBC 10 News.
Police in Attleboro have made an arrest on sexual assault charges. The suspect's accused of indecent assault and battery on a child. Police say 45-year-old Rufino Torres allegedly had inappropriate contact with a child at the Days Inn on Route 1. Investigators say the child was staying in a different room than the suspect. Torres is being held on $5,000 cash bail. Detectives say they're still conducting interviews in the investigation.
ISIS extremists have executed another American hostage. Peter Kasich was a young man from Indiana, kidnapped just over a year ago in Syria while he was doing humanitarian work there. NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel reports.
President Obama called his murder an act of pure evil by a terrorist group that the world rightly associates with inhumanity. The 26-year-old former Army Ranger from Indiana who served in Iraq traveled to Syria last year to volunteer as a medic. While delivering supplies, ISIS militants stopped him at a checkpoint and kidnapped him. Kasich, who converted to Islam and changed his name to Abdurrahman, reportedly endured torture and the mental trauma as other Western hostages, at times his cellmates, were taken one by one to be murdered. He knew his time would come. Last month, Kessig's father, Ed, read a letter written to the family by their son.
Don't worry, Dad. If I go down, I won't go down thinking anything but what I know to be true, that you and Mom love me more than the moon and the stars.
The Kessig family remembered his humanitarian work, sharing an audio recording of Kessig before he was taken captive.
I was able to share a little bit of hope and comfort with some people.
Unlike other execution videos put out by ISIS, this one did not end with a specific threat to kill another Western hostage. The group simply doesn't have that many Western hostages left to kill. Richard Engel, NBC News, Istanbul.
Recovery crews in eastern Ukraine have started to remove the wreckage from Malaysia Airlines Flight 17. Officials have commissioned the recovery and transport of the wreckage back to the Netherlands as part of the investigation into the cause of the crash. They plan to reconstruct a section of the aircraft. The recovery operation is expected to take several days. Most of the passengers were Dutch. MH17 crashed in Ukraine July 17th. All 298 passengers and crew on board were killed.
There are more problems for the cruise ship industry. The latest norovirus outbreak on a cruise ship has infected more than 172 people. Carnival's Crown Princess docked in Los Angeles yesterday. 158 passengers and 14 crew members came down with the virus during that 28-day cruise. The ship had sailed from Los Angeles to Hawaii and Tahiti. The Crown Princess is now in for a deep cleaning before the ship embarks on its next voyage. The same ship was the scene of another norovirus outbreak back in April. At least 150 people got sick on that voyage.
Time now 4:38. Time to turn our attention to sports here on the Sunrise Show. It's looking more and more like the road to an AFC title will once again go through Foxborough. The Patriots had another huge game in Indianapolis last night. Game you saw right here on 10. Sunday Night Football. They easily beat the Colts 42-20. At halftime, the Colts were only down 14-10, but the Patriots had a big second half. Undrafted running back Jonas Gray had a coming-out party at Lucas Oil Field. He rushed for 199 yards and a franchise record 4 touchdowns.
Mr. Kraft pulled me aside and said, "You're gonna have a big week. You're gonna have a big game this week, so be ready." And you know, just hearing that from the owner, hearing that from the head coach, hearing that from the leaders of the team, definitely gives you a positive outlook, and it definitely gives you the mindset to go out and do your best.
He just had great vision tonight, so I think he ran for almost 200 yards. So it's pretty, you know, it's a pretty sweet night for a running back to be able to do that.
So with the win, the Patriots improved to 8-2. The Colts fall to 6-4. New England will host Detroit next week. The Colts will host Jacksonville. And we're back in a moment with more of the day's news on this rainy morning with 37 degrees on the gauge outside of our Cranston studios. In a moment, we'll talk about why some people are upset about the restoration of a ship in Massachusetts.
Also ahead, 2 Providence teenagers have overcome challenges, and they put their talent on display in a new horror film. That's pretty cool, I guess.
Before we get to that stuff, let's convene another meeting of our internationally renowned Early Risers Club to welcome in another new member.
Our newest member, Frank, is from Portsmouth. Greg Williamson, good morning.
Greg, we're glad you're on board this early hour. Now, if you want to get your name announced on the air and printed on the screen, just go to your Facebook page.
Yeah, and do like Greg did. Say good morning and where you're from on our Facebook page. You do this before 5:30 in the morning. And in the coming weeks, we will be happy to announce your name and city or town, just like we did Greg's.
Closed captioning on NBC 10 is brought to you by Cardi's Furniture. Nairobi offers same-day mattress eye delivery 7 days a week.
Your family owns this land.